Hi.
Hi. What's your name?
Welcome to the Content Couple podcast. Short, casual conversations about self-help, self-improvement, health, change and mindfulness.
We are a couple with a shared passion for personal development and the pursuit of knowledge.
We use our daily city commute to share with each other and you, our audience, what we have learned from audiobooks, podcasts, books and other content.
Join us as we step outside of our comfort zone and discuss what we found helpful in our quest to bring the best versions of ourselves to every day.
Where we would prefer to be recording this from the beach, please be aware we are recording this podcast in the car and you may hear the occasional sound of traffic or Ashy cursing fellow commuters.
Our hope is that you take away one thing after listening through this podcast that will help you with your own personal development journey.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Content Couple. And what number is today's episode, Ash?
Episode 3.
Episode 3. We welcome you and thank you for joining us today. And before I start, there's something I just wanted to say. Ever have one of those moments when you wake up in the morning and you're getting ready for work and your partner kind of, you have one of those moments where you feel like there's been a tear in your reality because your partner wears a skirt or a dress or something you haven't seen before? I had that experience this morning.
Did you?
Yeah. And I know it's silly, but I thought I'd share it anyway.
That's cute.
Well, I hope everyone's having a great day thus far. Hope maybe your day's a little bit, maybe you haven't had the experiences that I had. Maybe your reality hasn't been blown open by your partner's wardrobe selections. But either way, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in this wonderful world. But we'll just jump straight into the podcast, shall we, Ash?
Sure.
Because you're always a wealth of information at this time of the morning.
Before coffee.
Yeah, yes. There should be a warning here that we are both in a pre-coffee stupor.
Yeah.
But we will do our best. But
it's Thursday, it's been a long week.
It has. And we make no guarantees, but that's okay. So as we've, I suppose anyone who's listened to our introductory podcast and our podcast to date, even though there's only been one of them, would understand that kind of what we're about, that this is just a casual, candid conversation on our commute to work in the car, where Ashley and I just talk about the content we've been consuming, really, like what podcasts, audiobooks or other books or websites we've found that we're using to improve ourselves, make us better people, and that are really just useful. So again, if there is any pauses or disturbances or background noise that you hear, please be mindful of the fact that Ashley is navigating the packed peak hour streets of Sydney. And she does that so well too. You should see the expressions on her face.
And I've managed not to swear on.
You have?
At the microphone yet.
So at the moment we're avoided any explicit rating, which I'm really impressed about, to be honest.
Me too.
That is something very different for us. So that we're giving you a bit of a background on what we're about in case you're joining us for the first time today. Ash starts her day by generally, as I said, listening to a podcast, audiobook, etc. If you want to tell me and the audience a little bit about what you've been listening to and I suppose what your focus is at the moment.
Sure. So we obviously both have an interest in how our mind affects our physiology, how our mind and our thoughts and beliefs and our feelings and emotions can have a very direct impact on the way that our physicality expresses itself from the cellular level up. And what I started reading today to get a better understanding of that was a book called Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I'm going to say from the outset, I'm in way over my head in terms of probably like year 10 anatomy and physiology, which I'm going to say I was preoccupied during year 10 science.
You're absent for, but even though you're sitting in the class.
So for me, it's been a very steep learning curve, a lot of rewinding, trying to get my head around the concept of all the very biological, scientific terms and concepts that he's talking about, even though it's probably really at its core, it's very basic.
Yeah.
But the premise of the book is essentially how our thoughts, feelings and emotions are signals,
Yes.
which are received by proteins, particular proteins that coat our DNA in like a protective cellular membrane on our DNA. And these signals from the outside world being, perception of stressful moments or...
So how we respond to the outside world.
Yeah, our perception of what's going on around us is a signal to the protein, which receives that signal and then kind of picks and chooses what genes activate. And the whole idea of it is that for so long we have assumed that my mum had cancer, my grandma had cancer, it's in the genes, I'll probably get it and it's just going to happen and I've got no control over it. Whereas his research is showing, and so many other people's research is showing that your genes are your genes and they're there, and your cells are your cells and they're there, but they don't activate unless we're in the environment or creating the environment that they need to activate.
Interesting.
If that is a very amateur summary.
No, but just to, I suppose, to double down on making it simple, because I think that was a very good explanation of it. But if I can ask you something, Ash, are you meaning to tell me and our audience that perhaps, as Dr. Bruce Lipton suggests, that we're having an effect on our body, our physiology, and potentially disease, illness, and our, I suppose, susceptibility to that and our ability to cure ourselves from that.
Yes.
We're having an effect on that based on not exactly what happens in the outside world or to us every day, but just how we view it?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
It's that classic fight or flight concept, because your body doesn't know that stress you're encountering is just the traffic or your boss putting more work on your plate than you can handle. It just perceives stress. So then immediately the body has that response. All right, I'm faced with a stressful situation, or the blood goes to your limbs, away from your organs. Your digestion's not as important anymore, so that starts to get affected. Your immune system gets a little less blood and energy to it, because that in that moment isn't as important as the fact that you need to run away from what your body thinks is a giant bear or something outside your cave. So and when you consider that modern life really seems to be nothing but traffic and bosses. And that's the reality we live in.
Feels like a Groundhog Day.
If we can't change our perception of those things that happen, we're constantly going to be telling our body to activate that fight or flight response, or the flight response. And
so if I can just ask another question, just to, I suppose, make this very clear for people that may be listening. No matter how much we try to make this simple, it's still even hard to get your head around for people like us who have, read several things about and learned several things about this in the past. All the stress related to having to get up, drive to work, get caught in traffic, curse at the crazy drivers, particularly the taxi drivers, deal with their boss and their perception of how they think about you and all the judgment that you have to deal with being in the workplace. And we come home and go, oh, later down the track, years down the track, we get, age-related problems or diseases relating to health. And then we sort of go, oh, that's because I had to do this job. When really that's not true, right? You're potentially saying that it was my attitude towards that job.
It was my perception of whether I needed to choose, or it was my perception of whether it was a stressful environment or not, and my, I guess, inability to choose that despite the factors that I'm dealing with, I can still have a positive mindset, look upon it with positivity, see the silver lining, find other parts and other areas of my life that I have gratitude for, and use all those sorts of positive thinking tools to change your perception of the immediate environment, thus not signaling to your body at the cellular level that you need to go into a fight or flight response.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, just to ask another question, does that mean that the book that you're reading suggests that the way that we deal with this stress, or that as a result of our negative perception or unhelpful mindset, right, that's resulting in this stress and therefore this impact on our body?
Yeah.
We're dealing with that with not trying to necessarily change our environment, because sometimes you just can't, right?
Exactly.
And it's like that whole Viktor Frankl thing, when you can't change your environment, you're challenged to change yourself kind of thing.
Yeah.
What Bruce Lipton seems to be suggesting, and this is probably putting it very, very rawly, is that you need to kind of replace the negative thoughts that you're having in result to a circumstance with a positive thoughts, overlay it with something different, such as gratitude.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that your circumstances changed and, that circumstance is not necessarily, a challenge to deal with, but you've got to look at it and think about it differently.
That's right. That's what the research is showing. And probably about a week ago when I was listening to another podcast to Dave Asprey and Bulletproof Radio, he was talking to someone else about a documentary they'd done, which I want to watch this weekend, called Heal, and it was all about people who had, spontaneously healed from life-threatening illnesses using, the power of their mind, essentially.
Yeah.
And what he had said during this podcast is that I just consider that my central nervous system's really stupid and it's just going to take whatever I say to be true. So I trick it all the time that everything's good. I tell it everything's good, nothing's stressful, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm physically well, I'm emotionally well. And just considering that you really can hack your biology if you understand how powerful your emotions and your thoughts and beliefs are.
Yeah.
And he intends to live to like 180 by utilising, other health kind of methods, but using that sort of
that's
concept.
Your starting point. Yeah. You've just given us an explanation of all this, and I suppose that's massive, really, for this podcast.
Yeah.
The next question I want to really ask is, if you were searching online looking for this research field, does it have a particular name that we can perhaps look out for?
Yes, it's all based on the field of epigenetics.
Okay.
Which I know you know a lot about, so maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I know a lot about it, but I have read books in the past about epigenetics, particularly ones by Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor, had an interesting story and has written several books on basically the power of the mind to heal us, heal our bodies.
Yeah.
And a lot of that talks about the same thing, the same things that you shared, the fact that our emotions are kind of like little switches that bond with peptides and then have a potential to impact us at I think it was the mitochondrial level, because isn't that the level where you heal at, or I don't know, it's the energy of our it's sort of like the energy of our body. I'm come to understand. I'm not a neuroscientist or what is it cytologists, the people that are study the cells? I don't know.
Yeah. Don't
quote me on that. But my understanding of epigenetics is that it comes back, I suppose, simply to that whole thing, is that we are not purely, even though this is true, because we live in this duality, this Newtonian world where there is cause and effect. Like if I jump off a building, we know due to the forces that we observe naturally that that's not going to be a good result.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've also got what a lot of scientists sort of seem to suggest is a quantum mind. Correct. Meaning that, and what I mean by quantum mind is that it's like the Schrodinger's cat thing, and I won't go into explaining that. I think people should look it up. But it's basically a thought experiment in regards to quantum theory. And it was basically, you probably heard it, just to explain it loosely, is that they did this experiment where they put a cat in a box with some slow acting radium or something, and at any time they knew that eventually they didn't really know that the cat would be killed by the radium, but there was potential that it would be. And so at any time, at any time, you weren't aware whether the cat was alive or dead in the box. And Ashley's like screwing up her face here because she loves her cats. You couldn't tell whether the cat was alive or dead. That was just an idea, kind of like a wave. The idea being a wave, which isn't really made tangible until you take the action of looking into the box and then finding out.
Right.
So at that point, the cat could either be dead or alive as an idea in your mind. So the way I want to relate that to this discussion, and I hope the listeners out there, viewers, they don't have the luxury that I do viewing you. But I hope people that are listening to this podcast understood what I said then, and if you don't, that's fine. If I explained it bad for all those science people out there, fair enough too. I wasn't professing to understand it. I probably got it wrong, but I think it established the general idea that until we actually act on something or make a decision on something, any outcome is potentially possible for a lot of things, particularly in our head, where what's going on in our head is usually infinitely more dangerous than what's actually happening in this duality, cause and effect real world.
Yeah.
So in terms of bringing it back to my point, is that we have this ability, despite this Newtonian world of cause and effect, where if we do something, the world's going to respond to us, or people are going to react, or if you throw a ball against the wall, it's going to come back to me, that kind of thing. We have the ability with our minds to consider every idea, and then we have an ability in the world to take action and try to make certain elements of what we think about true, but we don't have all the control. But what we do have control over is the things that happen to us that we often perceive are beyond our control. You know what I mean? We always have a choice of how we're going to feel about them, i.e. how we're going to let them impact our mind, and how we're going to let them impact the way that we feel or react. So, example, you say there could be something really simple, and I may get angry about it, or I may go instead. I could look at it and go, well, I'm lucky only that happened, because it could have been much worse, so I'm going to be grateful for that instead.
Yeah, that's right. Or just even accepting, well, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
So there's not really any point in stressing about it, because it's happened and you can't change that, but you can change whether or not you get upset about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and is it easy to do that, Ash?
No, it is not. You have to be so vigilant and self-aware, and that's a difficult thing for people to learn how to do.
And is that difficult for the reasons that you discussed earlier, that we have this prehistoric, freeze, fight or flight programming in us?
Yes, it is, because that's our first, response. But I think it's also difficult because of the way that the world is, the system that we live in is a very intense world, the modern world.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's traffic, it's financial stress, it's worrying about your job security, it's relationships can be stressful for some people. There's a lot of factors out there that probably never existed when our brains formed the way that they have. So
yeah, definitely.
So I think both of those factors play into it.
Yeah. So when it comes to this field of epigenetics, Ash, that I know we're both, as we've discussed, we're both taken an interest in.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you to want to learn about epigenetics?
Again, it's that quest for finding ways that I can use in my life to be effective, to be the most effective version of myself, to be as in control as I can be of my life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that mean, I suppose, shifting your mindset from being that of a victim of my environment and my circumstance to one where you can choose how you feel about everything?
It is. It's shifting from being reactive to being more aware and, more of an observer and more, probably a bit detached from the circumstances, and staying sort of within that that self-mind. And I think that getting into something like epigenetics gives you that really deep understanding on a biological level, especially the book that I started reading this morning. As much as it's challenging me, it is good, because I'm already, now the next time I have a stressful situation, or there's an issue that I'm going to react to, or I think that I might sort of stop and just imagine like the signal affecting the protein on my DNA, and then this bad gene that I don't want, or this cell doing whatever that I don't want it to do, and it might just kind of stop me in my tracks, I think, a bit, and be like, no, like don't let your body do that, because I'm very in touch with my body, and I do feel, the slightest biological change, I'm very aware of it. So that's a really cool point. Like that's pretty confronting when you think about it, because you can listen to a book and go, oh, they're just talking about all this gobbledygook that I think I understand, but I need to probably go to Google and look up these words. Yeah.
But at the same time, we've heard them before. We know they're important. We know that these words are a part of us, whether they're protein, peptide, mitochondria, DNA, all those sorts of things, whatever they may be. or receptors, or whatever those neuroscientific terms are. But at the same time, if you're hearing stories where they've been able to prove, or conversely, someone's been able to heal by changing their mindset, or they've been able to impact these things, it's pretty confronting, because if you're sitting there going, so if I just choose to try to not react with negativity or fear and try to be grateful for the things that I potentially do have, and just breathe more and give myself scope to breathe more and release a lot of the stresses that are in my life, and choose to be less stressful about stuff that cause you stress, even though they don't, in practice, they don't seem avoidable.
Yeah.
Then then that may result in you not getting cancer or getting cancer.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. Hey, it's we find ourselves spending money on vitamins, changing our diet, gym membership, trying not to put our mobile phones up to our head, or sleeping with our devices, not exposing ourselves to blue light. We love to talk about doing all these little cool modern hacks to health, but we don't actually then stop to think, well, we actually do have the tools, the biggest tool.
We do. We have the ability to, if the research is correct, which I'm pretty convinced, we have...
Science actually is convinced.
Science. We have everything that we possibly need.
Yep.
Right within our minds.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I suppose this is something, having not read the book or seen the research or anything like that, it kind of makes sense to me, because what a lot of people don't understand is our mind is a closed system. It's we've got all these chemical and electrical reactions occurring in our mind and with our body, but it's not like our brain itself is interacting with the outside world.
No.
And we often tend to, I suppose, we like to think about our personalities as if that's kind of happening, my feelings are somehow, that my brain is somehow interacting with the world by virtue of how I respond to certain situations. But it's really just our body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where to from here, Ash? You started reading this book.
Yeah. I suppose I would recommend maybe before picking up the Bruce Lipton one, if you're like me and not exactly a science girl.
Yeah.
I would start with the Joe Dispenza books. I think they're a really, really good explanation of what the type of thing that we're talking about, and probably a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah, I think there's a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah.
Joe Dispenza does have a lot of books that some of them are really lengthy, 16-hour explanations of what Ashley was talking about, with peptides and receptors, and explaining how everything happens, which is awesome if you're interested. But if you just want to learn how you can probably understand this concept a bit better than we could ever explain it, and apply it in your life, I think that Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself is probably the best place to start.
Yeah.
And there's an audiobook for it too.
Yes, there is. And I think that probably a book that I think deserves a podcast episode all to itself, because it's probably my favourite book ever, is The Genie Within.
The Genie Within, yes. Yeah. The Power of the Subconscious Mind.
By Harry, what is it? Harry something.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. But yeah,
Harry
The Genie...
Carpenter.
Harry Carpenter, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic book. But again, it may seem on the woo side because he doesn't go into the neuroscience.
Exactly. That's it. So it's a good balance.
It's practical.
Both. Yeah.
Because what's the point of knowing the neuroscience if you can't test it and validate it yourself in your own life? It doesn't, just because it comes back to the thing, just because you find a tool and use it and it doesn't work, doesn't mean it wouldn't have worked for someone else. So it's really that play that's involved with trying stuff and seeing how it goes.
That's right.
Yeah, excellent. So I suppose that's us. I'm just about to get dropped off. We've come to the end of our journey, our commute, and that signals the end of this podcast number 3. Thanks, Ashi, for sharing your insights into the world of epigenetics.
You're welcome.
I hope the audience, I hope our mums, dads and close friends
Enjoyed it.
enjoyed it. But if by chance there is someone that has stumbled across this, we appreciate you. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this. And I suppose the biggest thing is we hope that this has been in some way helpful, and that we can point you into direction of content, be it whatever books, podcasts, etc., that can help you be your better self and improve your life. Well, that's it for me, Matt. And
I don't have anything further.
You don't have anything further?
No.
Thank you, Ashi.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, this is Matt, and thank you for listening to another episode of The Content Couple. Ashi and I appreciate you, and appreciate that you have chosen to invest a small part of your day listening to our contribution to the podcast world. We love podcasts, understand there are thousands, and we are grateful you have chosen us. We believe nothing is more important than our time and yours, and we hope that in sharing how we acquire and apply what we learn, that you will take away something that will enrich your life. For Ashi and I, this podcast is a leap out of our comfort zone and a change to our normal everyday life. Our aim is to share and contribute, and we cannot do that without you. If you have enjoyed our experiment in self-awareness and self-esteem, we would be very grateful if you could quickly jump on iTunes, subscribe to our tribe, and give us that 5-star ratings that will help other awesome people like you find us.